Welcome to Ceasefire, where civics meets civility and engagement meets empowerment. Ceasefire is hosted by former Boerne ISD trustee and owner of the Boerne Bookshop, Dale Adams, and by former Boerne City Council member and local insurance agent, Ron Cisneros.
Welcome to Ceasefire, brought to you by the Boerne Bookshop. My name is Dale Adams.
And I'm Ron Cisneros.
And today we have got Michael Ethridge, the publisher of the Kendall Gentleman.
Howdy.
Michael, thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Michael, I had the pleasure of listening to you speak to my Rotary Club a few weeks back. And great story, and I was wondering if you could share a little bit with us this morning about what drove you to start the Kendall Gentleman.
Thanks for asking. Yeah, I had a great time speaking to the Rotary Club last week. I'm not usually functioning at 7 a.m., so that was a change up for me. Most of my clients don't get started until 10 in the morning, so that lets me sleep in most days. But the Kendall Gentleman, my new magazine, was born out of a desire to, a lot of change, right? Like I was going through a really weird time in my life. Career stuff wasn't going well for me. I was in a dark place. I'd spent a lot of time doing nothing, and I really wasn't advancing my life. And for those of you that know me, and Ron, you and I know each other for quite a while,
Yeah.
I'm always moving forward. And this was a period where I wasn't. And so I needed to do something different career-wise. I needed to change something. But I wanted it to have purpose and meaning, not just to me, but to more the people around me. And a friend of mine said, why don't you start a magazine, start a publication? And I was like, I don't know the first thing about that. Yeah. And so we brainstormed for a little while, and I did some research and got online and started finding, how do you do this? Who do you talk to? What do you get? So I lined up a really good photographer. I lined up an amazing graphic designer that had experience doing magazines. Even here locally, he'd done a bunch of magazines locally. And I put an infrastructure together to do it. And then I started just talking to people I knew that I relied on as somewhat mentors. The first cover was Tommy Matthews, and he was one of the guys I went and talked to and said, hey, am I crazy? Is this a good idea? And he said he loves it. And in fact, while we were talking, he goes, I love it. We'll advertise. And I said, Tommy, I'm not even here to ask you that. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm going to ask you that. But I wasn't here for that today. And so we talked, and he thought it was a great idea. And so I just decided to do it.
Great. Yeah. So what is the purpose of the magazine?
So I tell everyone that the purpose of the magazine is to raise the tide of men in Kendall County.
Okay.
I want to provide information, stories, just little tidbits of how we as men can do better and be better. And it's not meant to beat you over the head and say you're doing poorly, but it's just to give you a little piece of something that you read and you can relate to, because it's all local. It's all hyper-local information. And you can go, I can do that. That can be me. I can put that in my life.
Yeah, and you've got some great content in there, too.
Thank you.
One thing I remember when you first started, or before you started, is, and I don't even know if you emailed me something. I guess you did. And I saw it, and I thought, this is awesome. And I called you, or I emailed you back and said, hey, we want to be part of this.
Yeah.
And I think there's a desire for understanding what it means to be masculine and to pursue that.
Yes.
And I think it's more open here. People are more willing to talk about it here than maybe in some other places.
For sure.
But I think it's definitely something that's being sought after all over the place.
Yeah, you see it really in a lot of our pop culture today. We've spent decades now demoralizing and minimizing the role of men doing manly things, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about going out and being a lumberjack and chopping wood for your fire, which today's a really cold day. We need it. But it's about providing for your family, living a God-centered and Christ-centered life. It's about being part of your community, not shrinking away from it, and rising to the challenges that are presented to us, because we're all presented with challenges, and sometimes they seem insurmountable. But if we stand up and we do what we're called to do, we can overcome those.
Yeah. Do you remember a movie called American Sniper?
Yes.
Do you remember at the very beginning of that when he was sitting around the table with his dad and his brother, and his dad said there are three types of people?
Oh, vaguely. Yeah.
There's sheep, there's wolves, and there's sheepdogs. And you need to be a sheepdog. To me, a man is the person who's ready to be the sheepdog. Regardless of what you do in your life, I'm not a masculine guy, but every man needs to be prepared to be that sheepdog, whether it's physical or not physical. It could be standing up and speaking in front of a city council to what needs to be said.
I think we all have that in us. I think it's ingrained in us at a genetic level, really.
Yep.
And like I said, we've spent so much time trying to silence that for lack of a better term, that beast within.
Yeah.
But when we're faced with that moment, I know plenty of guys that will say that they will defend to their death their family. And we all believe that. We all would do that. But we don't like admitting it sometimes. And sometimes we wait for that extreme opportunity to come along when we need to be doing that in our everyday lives.
Right.
We need to be standing up for the things that we believe in and fighting for our families, our people, our communities.
Doing the right thing
Yeah.
is standing up in
Yeah.
a lot of ways. Yeah.
Like you said, I've known you for a long time. And one thing I remember is, oh gosh, I don't know how far back we're going, but you, I think, still hold the record as the youngest ever president for the Republican Club.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. And you're also a Freemason.
I am.
So you've been involved and engaged for a very long time.
Yes.
And I don't want to make any assumptions here, but I think that is what's driving this desire in you to do this magazine. There's certainly been this history of engagement.
Right.
Can you talk about that? What made you want to be the president of the Republican Club? What made you become a Shriner? What's driving all of that?
Sure, yeah. One of my faults is I'm really bad at saying no.
That's why you're here today.
No, I'm honored to be here. The Republican Club stuff, I got involved in politics in high school. My government class with Kim Grossenbacher, we hosted a candidate forum for a county judge. We had a 3-way race for county judge that year between Eddie Vogt, Galen Schroeder, and Jim McCormick. And that was a heated year because Eddie was running for re-election. This was, of course, the primary. And then you had these big names coming in with Jim McCormick and especially Galen Schroeder coming in, decided they wanted to run for judge too. And so we hosted at the high school a candidate forum, and my class elected me to be the MC for it. And so that was my kick in the pants to get involved in local politics. And so it just snowballed from there. All 3 of the candidates adopted me as their buddy, right? And so I didn't come out and endorse one or the other over anybody, but I got involved almost right away. And then after I graduated, not long after that, maybe a couple of years, Tony Andashiel had taken over as the Republican chairman here in Kendall County, and she asked me to lunch and sat down and asked if I would serve on the executive committee with her as her parliamentarian. She knew I had some experience in parliamentary law and Robert's Rules of Order, so I agreed to that, which kind of then snowballed into leadership roles in the Republican Club separately from that. But yeah, I got involved there. On the Freemasonry side of it, I grew up around it. My dad was a Freemason. My grandfather, whom I never met, but he was also, and even my great-grandfather, they were all Freemasons. So I grew up around it. When I was 13 or 14, my dad took my brother and I both to join DMLA, which is the youth group that's associated with Masonry, which he was a member of when he was a young boy. And so I joined that August 16th, 2001. I remember the date. And that kind of just spurred an appreciation for all of the bodies within Freemasonry, and especially the shrine here, because that was our prime sponsor, was the Al-Zafar Shrine in San Antonio. And so I joined that after I joined the lodge here in Boerne.
Okay, great.
A lot of involvement.
Yeah.
That's quite a theme in your life.
Definitely. And I've seen throughout my life, like when I shrink away from those things and I don't do as much in the community, my life declines. I see my work goes down, my income goes down, all of the things shrink away. But when I open back up and I give back more to the community, I receive back, in my opinion, I receive back more than I give.
Yeah.
Like it's an amplifying thing for me.
Yeah, I've experienced the same thing in my own life. And sometimes, like you said, it's hard to say no. And you'll have those moments where you're like, oh my gosh, why did I agree to do this?
Oh, yeah.
But there's a reward. And sometimes it comes years down the road, but there is a reward for that.
Yes.
You know. Got a little bit of information on what's driving this, I think. If I think that's a safe assumption that history of yours is driving this. And where do you see it going? What are the next steps for the magazine?
So there's 2 more big steps I want to take with this magazine in the immediate future. I'm going to launch a men's mixer to accompany it. And I haven't picked a name. I was just going off the assumption it was going to be the men's mixer. But I had someone email me the other day that said, let me know when you start the forum. And I wasn't sure what they meant, but I was like, that might be a good name for it.
Yeah.
You know, the forum brought to you by the Kendall Gentleman or something.
Yeah.
But I want to start that, just a no pretense, no agenda opportunity for the men of Kendall County to come together, spend some time together. If the cover story guy is there, listen to him one-on-one, hear what he has to say, hear his story, and then go back to your family, go home, go to dinner, whatever it is. No pretense, no agenda, just an opportunity for men to come together and be men together.
Excellent. I like that.
Pretty neat. I like that. Yeah.
The next big goal is what you guys are doing right now. What we're doing is I want to launch the Kendall Gentleman podcast as a full video production type thing that we can interview guys that, one, the cover story guy, obviously, but also just other men in the community that are doing really cool stuff.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, if only we knew a radio station.
I may or may not have been already talking to him.
So you've had some pretty neat people on your covers of your magazine. What is the process if somebody knows somebody that they think, oh, that would be a perfect person? How do you
Great question.
people?
Yeah, I'm actually developing that process right now. I put together a list of people that I know personally that are potential candidates for cover stories. I built a form for our website to nominate somebody. I haven't put it live yet, but by the time of this airs, it'll probably be live. So there will be a process for nominating. One thing that's important is you cannot buy your way onto the cover of my magazine. It is not for sale. I'll sell just about every other page in there, but not the cover story. And that's just a matter of integrity for me. I want the story to be an honest representation of somebody that I think embodies what I'm calling the quintessential American gentleman spirit.
Speaking of spirits, you've got Renita Rivas as a contributor.
Yes.
She's probably one of the most knowledgeable people about whiskeys that I know of.
Yes.
And so how are you finding your contributors? What are you looking for when you're picking these folks up?
A big theme of the magazine is capitalizing on my network, right? People that I've just learned and met over the many years I've lived here. And I knew I wanted to do cigar and spirit reviews in the magazine. And so I reached out to Clay Smoot, who has the Cigar Society, about doing cigar reviews, and he was in instantly. And then I wanted to do spirit reviews focusing specifically on whiskeys. And so I actually reached out to Danny Zink, and he's got one heck of a whiskey collection and is a wealth of knowledge. But he said, I'm not your guy, but I know who is. And he hooked me up with Renita, and she and I visited, and she was all about it. And so I learned a little bit about her. I didn't know, I had never met Renita. I'd heard or seen the name on social media, but we hadn't actually met. And so we visited, and she said she'd happy to do it.
I was on city council for 8 years, and Danny Zink never said anything about whiskey.
Oh, man, you missed out, yeah.
Oh, I'm tempted to get back on there and get in hell.
City council should have whiskey night, right?
Yeah, they should. Be a lot more entertaining. We might get more done.
They should treat it like the British Parliament, like with a 2-drink minimum kind of thing, before council starts.
Okay, with that, we're going to take a quick break. This is the Ceasefire with Dale and Ron, and we'll be back with Michael Ethridge in just a moment. Boerne has its own bookshop. In fact, it's called the Boerne Bookshop. Hi, I'm Dale Adams, inviting you to get lost. Get lost in a good book in our relaxed and casual atmosphere. We have a wide and eclectic selection in the Boerne Bookshop, and we pride ourselves on finding what you are looking for. We do author meet and greets, host writing workshops, and can connect you with a good book club. And your young ones will absolutely love our kids section at the Boerne Bookshop. And while we want you to get lost, we're easy to find, as we're in the heart of Boerne at the back of the Richter Tavern building. We are the Boerne Bookshop. We're back with Ceasefire, brought to you by the Boerne Bookshop, with Michael Ethridge, and we're talking about his new magazine, The Kendall Gentleman.
Hey, Michael, you talked about Clay Smoot earlier. I know he's got some pop-ups. Do you know where those locations are?
Yeah, he's got 2 in town, one at Free Roam Brewery, and so they're getting ready to fire back up their men's night. I want to give a quick plug to them for that. And then he's got another one at Rock and Rita's, across from Black Rifle.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
Are there any advertisers or contributors that are off limits to the magazine, people you wouldn't consider no matter how much money they throw at you?
Oh, that's a tough one.
I'm just curious. Yeah.
No, that's a great question. I don't have a firm no, but it's one of those things like you know it when it comes along. Yeah, I don't want your money.
Yeah.
And so I haven't said no to anybody yet, but I haven't been approached by anybody worthy of that conversation.
Yeah. I'm going to interject real quick here. We always like to promote a book on this show, naturally. Today's book is called The Complete Gentleman by Brad Miner. We've got it at the Boerne Bookshop. It's a modern man's guide to chivalry, and we've got a copy at the store. And where do you think chivalry fits into The Kendall Gentleman?
Oh, it's at the core.
Yeah.
I grew up, my dad and mom both were absolute sticklers about us being chivalrous and acting like gentlemen when we ran around. I remember even as a young age, I don't want to brag or talk about myself here, but when we were out in public, my parents had a very high expectation of how my brother and I were to act. And I remember that coming back because people would compliment my parents in front of me because of the way we acted. And it wasn't because my brother and I were saints or anything like that. It's because my parents had a system in place to make sure that we acted like it. Yeah. And so that is, we talk about, you hear a lot about chivalry is dead, chivalry is dead. I don't think it is. And I think it might be limping, but we need to be bolstering it up and bringing it back. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it gets a bad name, but I would love to see more of it come back.
I think chivalry and gentlemanliness and strong men are the foundation of any successful society.
Yeah.
And so we need to be honoring and promoting those things.
Absolutely.
What are some books that you're reading now or have read recently that promote what you're discussing and what you're trying to promote yourself?
I am the worst person to ask that question to. I spend most of my time reading nowadays articles that my people are writing and stuff online. I've got several books. One book that I have picked up, I haven't started reading it yet, but I know the essence of the content, is Andrew Klavan's memoir called The Great Good Thing, A Secular Jew Comes to Faith Through Christ. And if you don't know Andrew Klavan, he hosts the Andrew Klavan Show, which is his podcast he's part of the Daily Wire with Ben Shapiro and them. And he was raised a secular Jew and pretty liberal too. And he spent most of his life as a liberal. He's an author and a screenwriter and wrote tons of stuff that Hollywood's picked up over the years. But later in life, he found Christ, became extremely conservative, and talks about that in his show. And I listened to his show for some of the material, like the current events type conversation he talks about, but he does a question segment where he answers people's questions, and a lot of times people write in and ask him about faith and relationships and different things like that, and he has a really awesome perspective on his faith, and I am enamored by it. I love it, and I've written to him because I want to learn more about the church he attends and why he went there, and so his book is sitting on my shelf waiting for me to read it. I keep putting it off, but that's the next one on my list.
I've got a lot of books like that.
Yeah.
Ron, I'm over here. Remember when you bought me 2 years ago?
I buy books all the time. I bought one at your shop the other day, Dale, and haven't even picked it up yet. It's sitting on my coffee table.
Dale likes people like us.
I do. Of course, it leads to I decided just to buy a bookstore. This way I don't have to buy them. They're all there for me anytime.
They're there,
anytime I need them.
That's an expensive library.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Oh, that's like me and my idea of owning a record store. I'd never have to buy a record again. I'd have them all there at my fingertips.
Yeah, yeah, that's the theory.
Michael, you worked for a congressman for a while.
I did.
And lived in D.C., I think?
Yeah, I interned in D.C. for Congressman Kevin Brady. At the end of my internship, he hired me to come be a field representative in district. So I came back to Texas and worked my office was in Huntsville, but our district extended all the way down into Harris County, Houston, as far up as Houston County, which was Crockett, Texas, in that area. So we had a pretty big geographic district. And thankfully, I covered most of the rural areas, which was my bread and butter. And so I had a wonderful time doing that. Really awesome experience.
I would imagine so. It'd be a great learning experience and something that I'm a little bit envious. I know somebody that actually went and worked in Washington.
Yeah,
right?
I worked on the Hill. I can say that. Yeah, congressional staffer.
Yeah.
But would you say that was as satisfying or more satisfying or less satisfying than what you're doing now? Because I feel like now you're really working on the principles of what it is to be a man, where before you were working on legislation.
That was an incredible experience, like life-changing, awesome experience, and I recommend it to anybody. It's a special program for students in the College of Agriculture at Texas A&M that I got involved in, and I would recommend it to anybody that's in any sort of ag program at A&M, but it pales in comparison to what I'm doing now.
Yeah,
I work 7 days a week right now because I want to. I'm having a tremendous amount of fun putting this magazine together every month, and I really get up in the morning excited about what I do. Yeah.
And that having that purpose, that's sort of part of the whole gentleman masculine theme, is that you have a purpose in life and you're driven by it.
Absolutely.
And it's not work or duty or anything. It's something that you just believe in and follow completely.
Yeah.
You have this mission, this passion in life to bring masculinity and gentlemanliness and all of that back to Kendall County. What do you see as trends that are happening now in America or locally that help that or hinder that?
So several years ago, I started talking about Duck Dynasty. You ever watch the show? How do they end every episode?
With a prayer.
around a table with the whole family.
Yeah, that was cool.
I love that. Yeah. The first episode, I saw that, and I was like, this is it. This is what we need. And the popularity of that show was astronomical. I coined the term the Duck Dynasty Revolution. And the show has faded away, but they've been airing reruns for years now. And I really think that there's a movement, not necessarily tied to that, but associated with it in a way that's real. People want that prayer around the table with their family. And there's an earnest desire for that among people today. And even if you don't admit it, it's there. Yeah, there's something inside you that sees that and realizes that is wholesome. These people are happy, and they have gone through unbelievable struggles. If you read about the Robertson family, especially Phil and his challenges, holy smokes, unreal struggles from absolute poverty, basically among the dregs of society at some point, to now one of the most successful men in the country. And it was all because he found Christ and started turning his life around based on those principles, which are the same principles that we're talking about here. Yeah. And so the Duck Dynasty Revolution, to me, is happening in this country. It's happening a little slower than we might like, but it's happening. Yeah. With the recent election and changeover, we're seeing a lot change in the federal government, and a lot of these huge corporations that are so closely tied to the government are making major changes too that I think are going to start helping society. We've spent a lot of time with these major corporations doing everything they can to hurt our society. Yeah, I think we're seeing positive changes here.
Yeah. Michael, is there you've got the Kendall Gentleman launch. There's a blueprint where we're going to see the Kerr Gentleman, the Blanco Gentleman, the Bexar County Gentleman.
You were digging deep into my secrets here.
Oh, man.
Yeah. No, I do want to take this and franchise it. Yeah. I do want to make an opportunity for men in other communities to do the same thing I'm doing. I have the infrastructure now in place to make it happen for anybody. And so if you're listening to this and you're in Montgomery County or you're in Kerr County or somewhere around the country, quite frankly, and you want to do this, do the Be Your Own Boss model. You go out and you find the content and you find the ads, and I take care of the rest. I can get all the graphic design work done, the layout of the magazine, the printing, and everything. And so there's a model for that there in the future, absolutely.
Yeah, I think there'd be a demand for it in a lot of places.
Yeah. There might be a few counties in Texas where it'll be hard to find even one gentleman, but
because there's just a bunch of bad ones there, or there's no one there. Like there's two sides of that.
Yeah, they're just drowned out. They're there. Yeah. The gentlemen are there in every community.
Absolutely,
and they are looking for support. Yeah. And a voice, and I think this magazine
they're there and they're mentoring somebody.
Yeah. Yes.
Somebody looks up to them. Yeah. And that's what you have to find. There's somebody that somebody looks up to in every community, and that's probably your guy.
Yeah. Hey, folks, if you like what you hear on the show and you want to get some more of it, Dale and I would like to invite you to Whiskey and Wisdom, a new book club that started late last year, and we meet every other month.
And that would be the third Thursday of April, June, August, October, and December.
Please join us. We're going to have an assortment of whiskeys there and a great conversation about a very interesting book. Hope to see you there. Thank you for joining us today. It's insightful information. We appreciate you and what you're doing.
Yeah, and good luck with it.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I appreciate that.
And that's going to wrap it up this week for Ceasefire. If you've missed any of it, you can always go to BoernRadio.com and listen to our old episodes or catch this one or bookmark it for your future ones. We'll see you next week. Thanks.
Take care.
Boerne has its own bookshop. In fact, it's called the Boerne Bookshop. Hi, I'm Dale Adams, inviting you to get lost. Get lost in a good book in our relaxed and casual atmosphere. We have a wide and eclectic selection in the Boerne Bookshop, and we pride ourselves on finding what you're looking for. We do author meet and greets, host writing workshops, and can connect you with a good book club. And your young ones will absolutely love our kids section at the Boerne Bookshop. And while we want you to get lost, we're easy to find, as we're in the heart of Boerne at the back of the Richter Tavern building. We are the Boerne Bookshop.